Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. As Christ hung on the cross, he famously cried out to God to forgive them, for they know not what they do. As followers of Christ, we are also called to forgive those who have wronged us. We discuss the science of forgiveness with Dr. Robert Enright. Dr. Robert Enright is the author of Forgiving as Unity with Christ, a journey for healing resentment and relationships. He's a licensed psychologist, founder of the International Forgiveness Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to disseminating knowledge about forgiveness and community renewal through forgiveness. You can visit his work at internationalforgiveness.com. Robert, it's great to speak with you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Well, tremendous joy and very grateful for the gift of your book. And I want to begin the way you begin the narrative, which is it's easy to think of forgiveness as a kind of sentimental religious action. But the truth of the matter is, even from your perspective as a psychologist, you know that, as you highlight in the book, there are sociological, psychological, and therefore natural benefits to an entire culture adopting a posture of systematic forgiveness. Please tell us about that.
Well, I started studying forgiveness 40 years ago. I blinked and 40 years went by. And I'm in the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I obviously am immersed in psychology. And when I started studying forgiveness, much to my surprise, I realized that we supposedly are in the helping professions in psychology. Never once had a study published on person-to-person forgiving. And so I thought, let's map what has been learned for about 2,000 years as hugely important onto psychology and see what happens. And so in 1985, so long ago, I asked graduate students if they wanted to go on this journey with me to understand how forgiveness unfolds, and a lot of them said yes. I got them from all over the world, like Taiwan and Korea and Saudi Arabia and Greece and the U.S., and we started asking these questions. What do we mean by the term forgiveness? Then here's the psychological part. How do we go about it? And then the research part is what happens when a person forgives? What changes in them that we can measure? And that's where the three questions we started 40 years ago. And Marcus, I'm a very slow learner. I'm still asking those questions today.
I don't know if that's considered slow learning or meticulous continuation of research.
I like that better. I'm going to remember that.
Well, and if it's of any consolation to you, I've only been a practicing Christian for 17 years, and I'm barely scratching the surface of the church's teaching of forgiveness. And so it's important that you wrote this book, and in Chapter 5, you give us preliminary lessons about how to rightly understand forgiveness, because I think that's part of the problem. We have a society that has caricaturized everything the church has handed down, including forgiveness, and then written it off as nothing more than mythological drivel. So tell us what forgiveness actually is.
Well, when we started looking at the ancient scriptures, which would be Hebrew and Christian, and we tried to look at anything that was in English that would include Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and we marched up to modern-day philosophy. And we see a commonality across all of these, and it's this. Forgiveness, first of all, is a moral virtue. Any moral virtue, whether it's justice or patience or kindness, is being good to those who are in need of it, okay? Like justice, if someone builds a table for you and it's worth $100, you give something good to that person, which is the $100, and they give you the table. With regard to forgiveness, I came to realize it is probably the most heroic virtue on the planet. Because what you're doing is you're giving goodness to those who have not been good to you. You try as best you can to offer that goodness, sometimes through a broken heart. And that's why St. Thomas Aquinas had it right. He said, we can't do this on our own. We can't do it through the natural virtues. Mm-hmm. We need the grace of God to get us over that hump to really be good to those who aren't good to us. And in the highest level of forgiveness, we try to love those who are not loving us without excusing what the person did. That's often terribly misunderstood. We may or may not reconcile or come together again in mutual trust. When Jesus offered his forgiving love, not everyone came to him. Right. Otherwise, that would be the notion of universal salvation, which is a heresy.
Yep.
And when we forgive, we seek justice, we seek fairness. So if someone keeps belittling us in speech, we can forgive that person and ask the person to change.
Right.
And we might not reconcile with the boss if the boss keeps being mean, and we don't excuse the boss's behavior, but we have an outpouring of some kind of goodness, respect, or kindness to begin with, and as we deepen this, we try to love those who are not loving us. And that's consistent, especially with Christian teaching.
You bring to mind a few considerations about the end of Francis's papacy and the rise of Pope Leo XIV's papacy. During Francis's papacy, we often heard the terms the Pope of Mercy, and very often that term was anywhere from willfully ambiguous to weaponized by people who had narratives to push. But what you're telling us is what the Church has always taught, that mercy and forgiveness must be grounded in the objectively revealed truths of the Church, and therefore the justice that is owed in God and then to our fellow man.
Exactly. You nailed it, as they say, Marcus. That's correct. So we can actually draw closer to the Church and the Church's teachings as we nurture forgiveness in our own hearts. And then we can, and this is what the book is really all about, we can grow closer in love to Jesus Christ himself because he suffered for us. And we can then, the hope is, the deepest part of what forgiveness is, it took me a while to really understand this, is we can then redemptively suffer with Jesus Christ out of love for him toward the one who hurt us. So with that love established and nurtured with Jesus Christ, we can then offer that love to the one who hurt us, like pray for the person's salvation. And maybe our suffering with Jesus Christ may be efficacious in the salvation of that person who wounded us.
Right. And you highlight this throughout your book. It's even before encountering your writing, I came across that teaching of offering the suffering that's been done to me for the sake of the conversion of the one who has hurt me. And it's become, without a doubt, one of the most even emotionally satisfying dispositions to have in this practice of science in forgiveness.
Yes. Yeah, for those who can forgive very deeply and really understand it and not confuse it with excusing or automatically reconciling almost in a false sense, but really try to be good to those who aren't good to them, they can experience a rather remarkable inner healing of the heart where deep anger can go away, anxiety and depression can actually be reduced to normal levels. One's hope for the future can go up because one can find meaning in one's suffering, because that suffering gives you the opportunity to get to know Jesus Christ more intimately.
Right.
And then you realize, you know what? Nothing can ever really hurt me in terms of others' cruelty toward me, because I now have a pathway, which is forgiveness.
Right.
And that confidence can be healing.
My guest is Dr. Robert Enright. He is the author of Forgiving as Unity with Christ. This book is a very pastoral and systematic, but also easily digestible read. I greatly encourage you to procure a copy of it. It's published by EWTN Publishing, and we are continuing this conversation on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm talking with Dr. Robert Enright, author of Forgiving as Unity with Christ, a journey for healing resentment and relationships. Robert, we were talking earlier before the break about a proper understanding of forgiveness. And in the interest of making sure we pave the ground rightly, we also need to very honestly admit that for some reason there's this misplaced understanding that forgiveness means that the Christian willingly makes themselves doormats. That's not the biblical principle of forgiveness. So help us understand why that is.
Well, you're right, Marcus. Whenever I give talks to groups, I would say about 90% or maybe 99% of the people actually misunderstand what forgiveness is. Mm-hmm. And one of the major ones, as you say, is forgiveness is for weaklings. You just lie down and let people just step on your face. And that's not what it is at all. If you think about it, you are standing up to the pain of what the other gave you. You are making a decision, a courageous decision, to not throw the pain back onto that other person.
Right.
And even with your heart wounded by the other, you are willing to be good to the other in some way, whether it's praying for that person, a kind word about that person to other people, a smile, and maybe a returned phone call that hasn't been done in years. That takes strength. That takes courage. And then people say, yes, but now you're going to be abused again. No. Because you can be forgiving and say, stop it. In other words, engage in the moral virtue of justice at the same time. And so when you put the two together, this idea of forgiveness as weakness just falls apart.
And that, of course, is only able to be grounded by a society that has embraced the reality that love necessitates truth. In a society that thinks love is nothing more than sentimental validation of everything, love accepts you just the way you are. Of course, we have a misplaced understanding of forgiveness and justice.
That's right. Because, see, the kind of love that we talk about when you're loving those who aren't loving you comes from the ancient Greek word agape, A-G-A-P-E. And that's the one used in the ancient text, the Koine Greek in the New Testament. And agape love is not romantic hogwash, as they say. What it is, it's trying to serve the other for the other's sake. That's the kind of love Jesus Christ brought to the cross for us. Now he's asking us to unite with him on the cross with our pain and his pain together, so we can now give that agape love to the one who hurt us. And when we do that, we realize that this is a kind of giving that the world doesn't understand very well, because it can indeed be very service-oriented, and sometimes it can be sacrificial love, just like Jesus Christ gave us on his cross on Good Friday.
And that's a proper understanding, therefore, of what forgiveness actually is versus what forgiveness is not. And a society that embraces this rightly biblically grounded understanding of forgiveness will suddenly find itself reordered towards being more just, but also, therefore, practicing mercy rightly.
That's right. And in fact, what we can get out of that, if you think about it, would be healthier families, for example. What if people stopped displacing their own anger and disappointment onto the innocent others in their own family who weren't the ones who hurt them? Right. What if we had this in schools where those who bully, we can examine their woundedness, and out of their woundedness comes their attacking on others, and let's heal their woundedness. And then they can see, maybe I have to stop wounding others. Then let's bring it to the entire community, and let's bring it into parishes. How about establishing Catholic parishes as forgiving communities so that those who walk in the door can learn much, much more deeply about what forgiveness is, what mercy is, how to give it within the church, and then bring it out when we say, ida mista est, and we go out into the world, we bring that kind of mercy out into the world, to our workplace, to our families, to our local communities. We would have a better world.
Now, we've talked about the benefits of and also a proper understanding of forgiveness. If you could do us the service of walking us through that process model for healing that you write out in your book, I believe all of our listeners would benefit from it.
Sure. Yes, we call it the process model of forgiving, and it has 4 phases. The first is uncovering, where you uncover the effects of the injustice that might have happened to you yesterday or 20 years ago. Because what we have found psychologically is when people wound you, that's a point in time. But the effects live on in our heart, such as resentment, fatigue, thinking about it over and over, even becoming pessimistic and not trusting people in general because of what happened to you a while ago from someone who might not even be in your life anymore. And the light bulb goes on for people, and they say, I've been living with a burden that really has been caused by the injustice, and I haven't been aware of it. So then comes the second of 4 phases in the process model, the decision phase. Do you want to do something about this to cure your effects and maybe, if possible, if the other's willing, reestablish a relationship on a deeper level? And a lot of times people say yes because they've tried everything under the sun, and we go over what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is a moral virtue of being good to those who aren't good to you. You're not going to excuse. You may or may not reconcile, and please bring justice along. Are you willing to do it? If they say yes, we go to the third phase, which is the work phase. I call it becoming forgivingly fit. We hit the forgiveness gym, Marcus, here, and we start thinking in new ways about who the other is. We start expanding our view of who the other is. Okay? We see maybe that person's woundedness. We see a common humanity that we have together, where we both have inherent worth because we are both made in the image and likeness of God. You see. And so when people realize that and take time, it can take months to see that the one who hurt us is made in the image and likeness of God from Genesis 1, people begin to develop a little bit of compassion for that other person who might be wounded and yet shares a humanity that the person isn't fully understanding. And at that point, when there's a little bit of compassion, the person in the forgiveness gym can now stand in the pain and not throw the pain back to that person. And when the person, the forgiver, is strong enough to stand heroically in the pain, we ask the person to give a gift to the one who hurt them. But if they're a Catholic and they're willing to do this forgiveness gym more deeply than any other idea of forgiveness in the world, we then ask them to fulfill Colossians 1:24, which is the basis of Pope St. John Paul II, Salvifici Doloris, where this quote is really about what forgiveness is. It's Colossians 1:24, and I quote from St. Paul, "In my flesh I complete what is lacking in Christ's afflictions for the sake of his body, that is the church." What is lacking? Jesus had his arms reached out for us, loving us. In Salvifici Doloris, Pope St. John Paul II says, love is only fulfilled when the other says yes. And so what is lacking, nothing is lacking in the crucifixion. That's a perfect action of mercy and forgiveness. But what's lacking is our yes to Jesus Christ's love, and love to love completes that love. And when the forgiver does that and gets to know Jesus on this new level of completing his love and his suffering love with our suffering love now, can we now give a gift basically of ourselves to the one who hurt us by praying for the salvation of the other while we are wounded with Christ. And then we hit the discovery phase, the fourth one, where we find new meaning in suffering. Mm-hmm. Suffering actually can be an opportunity to get to know Jesus Christ better than you ever have before. Not that you seek suffering, but when it comes, you know how to use it. You can then develop a new purpose in life, which is to help others with their suffering. And you know what happens at the end of the discovery phase? This is the psychologist in me talking. Mm-hmm. People literally are healed in a way that surprises them greatly. And that is the process people go through. But being a Catholic is a great advantage because of this idea of completing what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ, and you love him more deeply than ever before, and you become the gift rather than just giving a gift to the one who hurt you.
And that's also precisely why this process of becoming a gift, like you rightly note, it's a process model. It's not something that happens overnight. In fact, later on in the book, you would talk about how there are scales of forgiveness, different degrees of forgiveness.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. See, forgiveness, just like on the Via Dolorosa, Jesus Christ wasn't just crucified. He had to walk that pathway. That itself was a process. Forgiving is a process, see, where we first open our minds and hearts to the woundedness in the other. We see a common humanity. We stand in the pain. And only eventually can we get to the point of suffering with Jesus Christ for others. And it is the deepest view of forgiveness I have ever seen.
Robert, true joy, thank you very much for the time you've made today.
It's been my honor, Marcus. Thank you for all you do.
My guest has been Dr. Robert Enright, author of Forgiving as Unity with Christ, published by EWTN Publishing. Please do procure a copy of this. I'm Marcus Peter.